Is that West Point US Military Academy? Sorry, it's a bad line. Benedict?
Owing to factors such as shifts in the balance of power, climate change, and new models of warfare, the 21st century is increasingly becoming a period of uncertainty. This, in some ways, mirrors earlier periods in history and within the military, where interest in the occult and alternative systems of belief proliferated.
Shortly after the Russian Revolution, Ivan Pavlov was a guest of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin in Kremlin, where he was instructed to apply his experiments with animals to humans.
The Last Will and Testament of Samuel Goldwyn.
Benedict, I need some files on General Douglas MacArthur. Around 1938, 39.
A resident of the county of Los Angeles, state of California.
He may have hired out the tower to MGM for a location shoot. It's important.
I hereby revoke all wills, codicils to wills or other testamentary dispositions at any time heretofore made by me.
Okay, sounds good. I'll be here till around 7 p.m. London time. You too.
Peace, tolerance, truth. Salutation on all points of the triangle. Respect to the order.
Straight away we're into the images of Crowley from a schoolboy and a youth.
To all whom it may concern, greetings and health.
He had the ability, when appearing in a photograph, to look out at the viewer, making a lot of people feel quite uncomfortable with images, because they do appear to have the strength to look back, a power which he had throughout his life, of course, which is probably one of the things that you would want to look into.
Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Over the course of nearly 18 years, I was probably involved in a few thousand operational taskings. More difficult, however, were the more than 1,000 viewings I did for research purposes during this period. And I probably did another 2,500 for practice, operational demonstrations, private and public demonstrations, that sort of thing.
The recent breakdown of boundaries between neurological and paranormal research disciplines is not only a result of social and political change. At the Institute of Millertronics and Advanced Time Interventionality, IMATI, we recognize that research into both ancient and contemporary systems can greatly assist us in developing the technologies of the future.
So, yes, I see. Elizabeth?
Yes?
Can you give me a moment? Can you download Mussorgsky's Night on a Bald Mountain?
Sure.
Mussorgsky.
Mussorgsky,
Yeah.
sure.
Mussorgsky.
Right on a Bear Mountain?
1860. Ideally, the recording on the album and the original Oz soundtrack. Get it tested for anything on the low or high frequency ranges, will you?
Okay.
Get Russell to test it first thing.
Will have possibly held on to things. Whether they have been cut out because it was unsuitable nonsense that was to be got rid of, or for a slightly more sinister reason.
What's that? Well, if nothing shows up, we'll have to get hold of the originals from the studios. MGM, MGM, Metro, Goldwyn Mayer. I know. Right. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Pavlov's research on experimental neurosis involved the induction of psychological breakdown through deliberate application of intolerable stress. This was achieved by conditioning reactions and then subverting them over and over again. Eventually, this caused in the subject a complete reversal of beliefs, a state of extreme suggestibility, and a radical personality change.
The OTO is a body of initiates in whose hands are concentrated the wisdom and the knowledge of the following bodies. 1. The Gnostic Catholic Church. 2. The Order of the Knights of the Holy Grail. 3. The Order of the Illuminati.
Well, in 1979, most U.S. intelligence agencies had become aware that the Russians had built what was the largest building under a single roof in the world, and no one knew what was going on inside of it. I was asked to remote view this facility, and I said I thought they were building a submarine. I was also able to provide specific details about this submarine, including its size, armament, hull configuration, and even the projected date of launch. And as a result of the information I provided, the intelligence community was later able to confirm the existence of the new Soviet Typhoon-class submarine, the largest in the world.
That's not bad, is it?
A collection of photographs of Sam and Francis. This one, Sam Goldwyn, the well-known Hollywood film producer and principal of Samuel Goldwyn Productions, photographed with Mrs. Goldwyn on board the Queen Mary recently.
It's not a bad idea, actually, on second thoughts.
Our program involves the testing and analysis of existing occult-based research in connection with military histories in order to develop accurate, neurologically based technologies for the new British military occult industries.
These results are similar to feelings and experience of religious conversion, guilt and fear combined with high levels of excitation and psychic release, which leads to irrational behavior patterns.
Joe? He kept an independent sound studio, Goldwyn, from 1922 onwards. No, he was never part of MGM, that was a 30. Yes, I realise that. Fantasia, that was RKO, Radio Keith Orpheum. John suggested we looked into the technology that evoked. In 1940. Yes, Fantasound. It was so complex, it could only play in a few theatres.
These are photographs that belong to Edna, his niece. Edna Linden.
11. The Order of the Holy Royal Arch of Enoch.
The cards mocked the beast. These cards I think you really should consider taking off for checking.
Nerve cells rely on electricity. They, and the genes they contain, may also be affected by electromagnetic emissions.
For the complete success of the revolution, Lenin intended to apply Pavlov's new conditioning techniques to Russian people and then the Chinese, then the Central European republics, and finally to the rest of the world.
Yes. West Point was built by a Pole? No, I didn't know that. Kosciuszko? Really?
Edmund's father, Wolf, was an inventor. Blueprints for a super fruit machine, I think. Difficult to tell what it is, really. Blueprints. A patent. Lodged 16th of October 1937.
It does not include the AA, with which august body it is, however, in close alliance. It does not in any way infringe the just privileges of the duly authorized Masonic bodies.
But there's something inherently quite dangerous about the man, which is presumably why you're interested in his works.
Stargate, how are we going on that? Inopium? What's that about? D, the alchemist? I think so. School, perhaps. Probably. Right.
Probably less than 2% of the information pertinent to the program has been released. Certainly almost none of the operational data, and a great deal of the research data is still classified as well.
Soviet brainwashing techniques were used extensively during the Stalinist period, especially during the Moscow show trials of Great Purge, which was from 1936 to 1938, to extract confessions of guilt from Stalin's political opponents.
So, exactly how much of this occult stuff are we going to get our hands dirty with?
Wolf worked for HMV at one stage, his master's voice.
The dispersion of the original secret wisdom having led to confusion, it was determined by the chiefs of all these orders to recombine and centralize their activities, even as white light, divided in a prism, may be recomposed.
Again, it's always said he found himself in the company of attractive women, which he did, but he found himself in the company of very influential people as well. And these, again, you want to possibly look at these slightly with slight suspicion.
Neurons, and therefore brains, are electromechanical entities. They can be influenced both by many kinds of molecules and by electromechanical stimuli.
The defendants were accused of conspiring with the West to assassinate Stalin and other Soviet leaders as well, to dismantle Soviet Union and to restore capitalism.
Physical influences include radioactivity, electromagnetic radiation, which can include visual images, temperature changes, magnetic fields, etc., and quantum effects.
Down at the sound stage, sound studios in Los Angeles.
The work that he was doing and the other people of OTO was certainly using powers and energies that could be of use to, obviously, to the military, and of course he was working to some extent he was working with people from ministries, not necessarily your ministry, but ministries were showing an interest. This is actually quite a nicely produced thing from the OTO. temple.
The Moscow trials are today universally acknowledged as show trials in which the verdicts were predetermined using extorted confessions.
Stages 1 to 7.
I'm thinking of the old US radar station, that's all. Is there a connection with that?
L. Goldwyn Studios.
In more recent times, the originating assemblies of the OTO included such men as Foey, Hippolytus, Lao Tzu, Merlin, Siddhartha, Arthur, Krishna.
Now we're getting to the temples, the OTO temples. This is the California temple. They all carried the same basic design, which was almost as a small chapel, simple things. I don't know that. I mean, you can see here that we've got the different characters. The priestess, accompanied by her servers, the priest.
My Legion of Merit Award, which I received for my work in the remote viewing program, mentions a number of agencies, including the CIA, DIA, FBI, Secret Service, Department of Defense, U.S. Customs, and even the U.S. Coast Guard. There are numerous others which will remain anonymous. I might add that is normally the case. Information of extreme value is always separated from the source in order to protect the source. So it would not be surprising if some of the agencies that used our services didn't even know they were doing so.
Until someone comes up with an empirically testable counterclaim, the assumption that all brain-changing influences act at base by changing brain electrochemistry is likely to remain secure.
In Hungary, there is an interesting case of Cardinal Joseph Midzenti, who was brainwashed in so-called magic room in Hungarian State Interrogation Center. This magic room was the irregularly shaped room. It had rotating lights, moving image projections. It had a sloping bed that was impossible to sleep on. There were strange sounds in the room as well that was alternating between music and some tortured screams. The meals were served on irregular times, and where victims basically were drugged and abused as well.
Warburg Institute. Can you put me through to Charles, please? He's not in. Okay, right. Ian? Ian? Why not? Okay. Ian, hi. Good afternoon. It's the Ministry of Defence speaking. We'd like a moment of your time.
The magic room was the most frightening workshop of Soviet mental destruction, like some kind of psychological atomic reactor.
Sam with Richard Nixon.
Now, at the moment, by using computer-enhanced EEGs, we can identify and isolate the brain's low-amplitude emotional signature clusters, synthesize them, and store them on another computer.
The actual term brainwashing was born after Korean War, and the term was coined by CIA operative Edward Hunter, and it was after US soldiers emerged from prisoner of war camps as apparently converted communists.
An aerial shot of MGM Studios.
Well, if you want to refer to the father of remote viewing, you'd have to go back half a century to the French parapsychologist René Worcallier. He delivered a lecture at the Sorbonne in 1946, where he presented the results of hundreds of experiments that had been conducted in the decades prior. And the examples he presented were clearly and without a doubt remote viewing. His work was certainly limelighted by Ingo Swann's work with the ASPR, as well as by the work done by Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ at SRI International.
The word itself, according to Hunter, is a translation of the Chinese concept of Xin Nao or Xin Nao, a colloquial rendering of Shu Xiang Kai Cao, which translates as thought reform. And the origin of this word is much older than the communism.
Pat Price, one of the first remote viewers to be tested by Puthoff and Targ, certainly was instrumental in establishing the intelligence value of remote viewing. And over the past 10 years, a significant amount of research has been published by Dr. Edwin C. May of the Cognitive Sciences Lab. We couldn't have gotten to where we are today without any of these individuals, as well as dozens of others who made significant contributions.
In other words, by studying the subtle, characteristic brainwave patterns that occur when a subject experiences a particular emotion, we have been able to identify the concomitant brainwave pattern and can now duplicate it.
It was after Korea that US began in earnest its own experiments in mind control to counter perceived Soviet and Chinese advances in brainwashing techniques.
It's in Fantasia.
Projects such as Operation Bluebird and MK Ultra that we knew about.
Same piece. Bald Mountain. Perhaps. Ralph checked it out. Nothing. No.
Quirky. General Douglas MacArthur. Leyte Island.
Johannes D. Francis Bacon. Sir Edward Kellam.
This is the OTO certificate, which is rather grand. It's got metal elements on it in the seal, but it would be interesting to check for things like magnetism and whether there's a magnetic field given off by that.
US behavior control experiments, unlike those we conducted in Soviet Union, included extensive use of drugs such as LSD and mescaline on military staff and on unwitting civilian participants.
Maybe something in the adjacent ultrasonic frequency spectrum. He's not sure how absolute he can be on this.
They also involved sending electronic signals to alter brain functioning, experiments with magic and graphology, hypnotic agent programming, subliminal perception, and other black psychiatry techniques.
Probably the most elusive of lost films is The Magician, a 1926 film version of Somerset Maugham's early novel inspired by the legendary Aleister Crowley, novelist and famous practitioner of the black arts.
Brocken, it's a mountain in the middle of Germany.
In the mid-20s, newspapers here and abroad were full of reports on Crowley's founding of a love cult in Sicily, a combination of sexual rites and old-fashioned demonology that could not help but capture the fancy of Rex Ingram.
And recently, Wolfgang von Goethe, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Now, these brainwave signal clusters can be piggybacked onto ordinary radio and TV carrier frequencies and will silently trigger the occurrence of the same basic emotion in another human being.
One could surmise that the infiltration of drugs into the civilian population was largely responsible for the rise of the countercultural movement in America. which in turn was responsible initially through Jim Channon and of the 1st Earth Battalion and the psychic abilities of the New York artist Ingo Swann for the cause of further experiments in psychic warfare by the US military.
A gift to the people of Poland, to the people of Warsaw, from the Soviet government. A palace of culture. With a very large aerial on top.
Such projects as the CIA-funded remote viewing program at Stanford Research Institute in California and at Fort Meade in Maryland, where trained psychic spies attempted to use remote viewing to identify and draw the locations of missile silos, submarines, POWs, and MIAs.
On my observation, every human being who ever walked into a lab and was subjected to a properly orchestrated remote viewing experience under the appropriate controls demonstrated some degree of psychic or remote viewing ability.
From the mid-90s, US closed down its remote viewing program and concentrated on its psychological operations command programs.
Is this really necessary?
Because in 1992 a man called Oliver Lowry had come to the attention of US military. Lowry had discovered a new and advanced way of attaching intelligence to high and low frequencies for inducement into the brain. The Americans used this technology to broadcast with loudspeakers in Afghanistan, in Panama, in Waco siege in Texas, in Iraq, and in Guantanamo Bay.
New technologies will use electromagnetic radiation to affect or even burn out the neurons involved in implementing certain cogwebs or hitherto untapped techniques for the quantum world.
It was Karl Kellner who revived the exoteric organization of the OTO and initiated the plan, now happily complete, of bringing all occult bodies again under one governance.
Right, this is the section that deals with the pastel drawings of Aleister Crowley. I can only say that artistically they have very little merit, in my humbling opinion.
So, these towers are positioned...
In Russia, we had already been using these technologies for quite some time, but we were transmitting remotely.
Joe's getting all the occult material frequency tested. Still need some more facts though, some locations. Coordinates are important. Well, the numerologist says so. It's that Hebrew system. Gematria. No. They're using it in the States.
We were broadcasting from TV towers in Moscow, Berlin, Warsaw, Broken, and later on when China built its towers, these towers were used also.
Well, to my knowledge, again, yes and no. In my talks with both Russian and Chinese experimenters who were and still are pursuing investigations into remote viewing, many of their methods are different. Some of them are clearly operating within the boundaries of good science, and some of them are not.
Now that we're coming to understand which genes control synaptic plasticity, we will be able to control which beliefs are held and how strongly, which memories are kept and which forgotten, which actions conceived and which remain beyond imagining.
No. Loudspeakers. We can't use them anymore. We need a remote system. Of course. No. That's the whole point of the operation. We'll just tell that to MI6. They aren't being very smart.
Letters from Warsaw to Lvov and then further east, carried by Pola, all the way from the borders of Afghanistan back across Europe to London.
The letters OTO represent the words Ordo Templi Orientis, the Order of the Temple of the Orient, or Oriental Templars. But they have also a secret meaning for initiates.
How long do we have?
The order is international and has existing branches in every civilized country of the world.
Given from the sanctuary of Gnosis.
As well as the very open Crowley, there was a very secretive Crowley mixing with people of not only various social levels, but also various governments, various agencies, and would certainly not want to be recorded for obvious reasons. See a date on this. This is 65 printed. This is from Gerald York.
Well, we've gone to an excessive extent to biologically measure or model human thoughts or consciousness while doing successful remote viewing. To my knowledge, however, no specific parameter, effect, or measurement has yet been produced that would differentiate a bad remote viewing from a successful remote viewing, other than post hoc analysis of the targeted material. Essentially, a successful remote viewer is neither unique biologically nor mentally from any other human being. However, we have found a strong indication of where just such a measurable difference might lie within the human brain mind, and we are vigorously pursuing it.
We could piggyback mind control intelligence onto TV frequencies far afield. I can't exactly say how far.
The aims of the OTO can only be understood fully by its highest initiates. But it may be said openly that it teaches hermetic science or occult knowledge, the pure and holy magic of light, the secrets of mystic attainment, yoga in all its forms.
We shall work out how to trigger genes remotely without unduly toxic side effects and with greater accuracy in time and space.
How the West was won. The bandwagon. Singing in the rain. Gigi.
No, I don't think Maya's telling the truth. Right. Okay. Bye.
Oh no, we're getting towards the pictures of Jack Parsons here. Jack Parsons, of course, I don't need to tell you, but the independent rocket scientist. I mean, the concept does seem strange, but he was working on things which have proved to be absolutely frighteningly efficient, but was terribly disappointed to be dropped from official research and carried on his own, which led to his unfortunate demise.
We shall be able to generate a certain belief, but also we shall then be able to fix it so that no further modification occurs, creating the ultimate impervious dogmatic.
But I'm telling you, what the Americans forgot about was parascience. In their excitement with sound technologies, they left behind the psychic research.
We need it by this afternoon.
I know we do. We should have had it yesterday. It's quite incredible. So incompetent.
We in Russia, with the Chinese, we put the two together.
Porgy and Bess. Slaughter on 10th Avenue.
Remote viewing can be used like any other intelligence collection tool. One should remember, however, like all other forms or other methods of collection, it should never be used in a standalone mode. It's just as effective against bioterrorism as it is against chemical, nuclear, or any other kind of terrorism.
The music of MGM.
It possesses the secrets of the Stone of the Wise, of the elixir of immortality, and of the universal medicine.
Metro Goldwyn. Probably the most elusive of the lost films is The Magician, a 1926 film version of Somerset Maugham's early novel, inspired by the legendary Aleister Crowley, novelist and famous practitioner of the black arts.
Moreover, it possesses a secret capable of realizing the world-old dream of the brotherhood of man.
There are obviously stills from it, but that's all we seem to have now.
In the 1980s, Michael Persinger, an interdisciplinary behavioral neuroscientist, investigated the neuropsychological base of God beliefs through the systematic application of complex electromagnetic fields to discern the patterns that will induce these kind of experiences.
Yeah. The Science Museum. The D crystal. No, I don't draw. Sorry. Yeah, I can take Elizabeth.
Persinger's research has been encouraged by the historical fact that the most wars and group degradations are coupled implicitly to God beliefs and to the presumptions that those who do not believe the same as they experience are somehow less human and hence dispensable.
Now, we have here the obituary of Major General Fuller, historian and influential military thinker. Something's been removed from this page as well.
Apart from a small grant by the US Navy in 1983, I think, US showed no interest in these experiments.
Personally, I would automatically assume it. Given the paltry financial resources of most terrorist organizations, it would give them significant bang for the buck. Because many of these terrorist organizations operate on limited dollars or with access to limited technology, there's no reason to assume that they are less sophisticated. Many of their leaders are very well educated and very dangerous people.
Our sense of freedom may be a basic emotional reaction, but its associations with particular abilities, to speak our minds, to go where we please, and so on, these are learned connections.
I'm not sure what we're supposed to gain from this exercise. Enochian. Stargate. That was MGM 1994. Sorry, you brought that before. Oh, right. The US program with the same name. Okay. Decommissioned a year later. Is that so? Right. Not necessarily.
Further examples of the Avotio temples, this one being in Zurich. And now this.
Collection of microphones.
Yeah, I received the microphone. Yeah, I got it here. The lab says it's late 1930s, early 40s. Maybe used in Fantasia. We're still getting the test results through. First thing tomorrow morning we'll know if it's a carrier.
For some time we have been able to combine parascientific and neurosonic technologies to first stimulate the temporal lobes, which are the psychic areas of the brain of the subject, and then go in with the mind altering frequencies. And we can do this remotely and from a great distance.
The trick is to disable the brain's alarm signal by breaking the connections or preventing them from forming in the first place, so that reactance is no longer triggered when, for example, the right to free speech is infringed.
65, as is this. This something which looks like a pageant. Of course, it's anything but a pageant.
Then there will be no emotional reaction, no fire to be dampened down or stamped out by force. We shall possess alternative methods, giving us the power to pinpoint an association's neural source and then tidily remove it from the mind.
But more importantly, while the Americans are still playing around with their loudspeakers, changing behavior, we are changing beliefs on fundamental level.
Joe, we opened a pathway. The subject entering Westminster Tube Station. That's right. He took the carrier signal and turned round. He just entered the MOD by the underground parking ramp. Ralph was instructed to let him pass into the ministry. Should be coming into my office any time now. Right. Yeah.
Well, it's going to have to wait until Mr. Beaton tonight.
He's converting as we speak.
Yeah, probably this afternoon.
Yes. Not sure. Yes, Joe. I see him now.
Stargate. It will take you 1,000,000 light years from here. But will it bring you back?
That took some doing.
He just turned round. Yeah, to Westminster Tube Station, just turned round, took the carrier signal, off he was. There we go. Just like that.
So there's the scrapbook, the photograph album, whatever you call it, which you're more than welcome to take away and do with as you will.
Sorry, I can neither confirm nor deny any such work.